Hi, this is Jen DeVore Richter. You're listening to Awakened Nation with Brad Zales.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zales, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Jen, or should I say Jen, welcome to the show.
However you want.
You know, every time I see Bat Dad, I think of you because he's like, Jen. But ladies and gentlemen, you're in for a real treat today. I have a friend on who I tease relentlessly, but she used to work at NASA. So every time I introduce her, I have to say, this is my favorite astronaut, or she invented the heat tiles in the bottom of the space shuttle. And we just have so much fun with it. So welcome to the show.
Great to see you, Brad. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, you're easy to tease, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, well, I grew up military brat with a dad in the Air Force and two younger brothers. So I'm used to it.
You're used to it. Good.
I can take it.
Everybody, I want you to hear her bio because we're going to have a lot of fun with this today. Jen DeVore Richter is the former head of advertising and consumer research for NASA at the Kennedy Space Center. She made the switch from NASA marketing executive to entrepreneur in 2003, and in 2019 was awarded Innovator of the Year. That's a pretty good title for you. And this was for excellence as a marketing consultant. She is the author of 4 books, including her latest, Outsource Your Marketing, Reach More Prospects, Scale Faster, and Work Less. Jen holds a master's degree in business management. Her career expands over several industries, including television and broadcasting, advertising, speaking, and magazine publishing. She is a globally recognized expert on the topic of authority marketing. We're going to be talking about that. Holding the top spot on YouTube as the #1 channel on magazine publishing. She has presented for Dan Kennedy's Magnetic Marketing, ClickFunnels Radio, and Video Marketing World. Jen is a certified platinum business coach and professional speaker, lauded for her fluff-free, results-oriented approach. Jen lives in Golden, Colorado, but has clients all around the world. Please welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen, Jen DeVore Richter. Hi. Great smile. So let me ask you, okay, you just said you're an Army brat. Where have you lived?
Air Force.
You're an Air Force brat.
Oh, yes. You have to get that right.
Yes. And so where have you lived? Everywhere?
Pretty much. I was born in England. Then we moved to Germany. And I moved to the States when I was about almost 9. Mm-hmm. And then in the States, lived mostly in Texas. I graduated from high school in Oklahoma, lived in Florida, Virginia. So I've lived a lot of different places.
Do you speak German?
No, but I used to be able to. And I can count in German. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But I can also understand mothers when they're speaking to really tiny children about very basic things. I can piece together what they're talking about.
There you go. You have to be immersed in a language.
Yeah. So
let's go to NASA. This is my favorite thing with you, and I love to tease you about it. But how did you get that job at NASA? And was it a lot of pressure to get in there?
It was totally random. I was working in television at an ABC station, and ABC was owned by Disney at the time. I don't know if they still are, but they were at the time. And I really wanted to get a job at Disney World in Orlando. And so I asked my boss at the TV station to put in a good word for me. I tried to get interviews there, couldn't get in. But it got me interested in the tourism industry in Florida. That's the biggest industry. Everybody wants to work at a park. And so I didn't want to stay in television because the pay was absolutely horrendous. So I didn't want to stay in television. So I wanted to get a job at one of the theme parks. And I was watching television, and they were having the Armageddon movie premiere at Kennedy Space Center. And I lived about 45 minutes away from Kennedy Space Center. And I had never thought of it for some reason. I was always distracted by Disney and Universal and SeaWorld. And they were having the Armageddon movie premiere on E! And I was like, oh yeah, I should go work there. That's what I should do. So I went on their website. This is so easy. I just went on their website and I saw that they had a position available. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but I was like, well, it'd be a foot in the door. Let me see. In the marketing department. And so I applied, didn't hear anything for months. Finally, they called me and I went in for, I started the interview process. It was not easy. It was, 3 or 4 interviews, like a whole rigmarole. And then I got the job. And so that was it. I basically watched Armageddon, got inspired, went on their website and applied. That was it.
Wait a minute. I thought there was a deeper story here.
That was it. It just was, paying attention.
So let's explain what you did over there. I mean, you worked with the Apollo astronauts, am I correct? Yeah.
Buzz Aldrin used to call me on my office. We didn't have cell phones back then. So he used to call me on my office phone. Hey, Jen, it's Buzz. I worked with him. My job responsibility was managing all the paid advertising when I got to the job that I really wanted. It took me a couple of years to get to that point. But when I got to that job, I was the manager of advertising and consumer research. So I ran all of the TV commercials, radio ads, billboards, print ads, all the sales collateral, everything went through me. I managed an ad agency at the time to do the production. But also we were kind of a smaller department of like 30 people. And so when we had space shuttle launches or Apollo anniversary events and things like that, each person in the department would get assigned an astronaut, and Buzz Aldrin was my guy. So I was like a really, really close relationship with him. But I met everybody, like space shuttle astronauts would just be like walking around in our office. And then when the big guys came through, like Wally Schirra, one of the original Mercury astronauts, was one of my friends. But when the big guys came through for special events and occasions, I did get to, rub elbows and shoulders with them sometimes. It was cool.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by the whole Apollo launch. I followed everything. So, hearing your stories were just, a flashback, and I just sit there and I go, wow. So what was it like working with Buzz? Because, you had to push him out on stage and escort him, watch his schedule, things like that. What was it like? Because he appears to be a lot of fun.
Buzz he likes the spotlight. He was very much, Neil Armstrong did not like the spotlight. We couldn't get to Neil to come to an event to save our lives. Maybe one time, I think the whole entire time I worked there. But Buzz loves the spotlight. He loves being loved being a spokesperson basically for NASA and just a big champion. The only thing that I ever had to work with Buzz on was that he would always wear the same tie. It was this like planets tie. And I was always like ribbing him about wearing a different tie, but he never did. But
well, it makes video editing easier.
That's right.
You wear the same outfit all the time,
Yeah, he was awesome. And I got to do some amazing things there. I literally sat in the chair, the same chairs that the astronauts suit up in. Got to go on launch pads, touched a space shuttle, walked underneath space shuttle in the vehicle assembly building. Got to touch shuttles. Just worked with some amazing people like Dean Kane, who created the first robotics competition. He invented the first stand-up wheelchair and the first dialysis machine, and got to work with him closely. Just like really inspiring people doing epic stuff. It just really changed my whole life in terms of like how I look at my potential. And I was going to talk about that because once you work at NASA, it's kind of like, well, where do you go after that? I mean, really? Yeah. Yeah. The one of the directors at the ad agency that I managed, one time he said to me, he's like, this is way back in like the early 2000s, but he was like, yeah, Jen, where do you go from here? Because this is like if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere job. Right. And I was like, you're right. I mean, he kind of was right, but the reality, so that was an awesome job. Super grateful, blessed, happy to have had that once in a lifetime experience, if that. But there were some drawbacks, like the pay was not great. The hours were very long. My whole entire life revolved around my work 24/7. I was going through a master's program at the time too, that was on base at Kennedy Space Center. So when I was going to night class, I was on base. When I was at work, I was on base. All of my friends were from the space program. Like, I didn't have a life. And my first husband, when I was dating him, who I met through work, he threatened to not marry me because I was working so much. And he was, he was like, this is not a healthy way to live. And so either you can keep working that career or we can get married. And that's the reason why I left, was because I knew that, yes, it was great, but I needed a well-rounded life, a more healthy life. And that was what inspired me to get into entrepreneurship, was, because having big fancy job titles is cool and all that, but it's not everything. There are more important things in life, I think.
It is so true. A lot of young people today, they ask me, what advice would you give me? And I was like, make your resume impressive. And I think you did just that. Spending time at NASA, you could pretty much go anywhere you want in the world. I want to back up for a second. Dean Kamen was so impressive to me as a genius. I devoted an entire chapter to him in my first book.
Did you really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
Okay.
a lot of people don't know this. Dean never had a degree in physics or any of the things that he did. But what really got him started is when he was a teenager, he was playing around with motherboards that he wanted to attach to video security systems. And so he would take jobs at security places to test his stuff. And he started such a successful company. His mom had to run it because he was underage. They had his buddies after school filling packets to mail out to these companies for his products. He was so successful at like 17. They had to lift the house up to expand the basement so that they could, make this business grow. And so this is a guy who just did it. And the fact that you got a chance to, meet him, I'm also in awe of that as well.
I've been to his house. Like, I was really good friends with all these people, like crazy, really tight. And I don't even think at the time I appreciated it or knew what I was dealing with in context, because everybody was so awesome. But yeah, I got assigned to be the Kennedy Space Center, one of the Kennedy Space Center reps for the first robotics competition. FIRST is the acronym for this kids robotics competition that he was launching. And we were hosting it at the Space Center. And so they were, here, go to Connecticut or wherever his house. I think it was in Connecticut. They were like, go to Connecticut and you guys are going to have a committee meeting at Dean's house. I'm like, all right. So I go. I'm like literally 20 something years old. I don't really know much about who these people are. I knew who the astronauts were, but not like Dean Kane. He was a little underground. And so, I get in the taxi cab, fly there, get in the taxi cab, go to his house, and I'm blown away. This thing is a humongous mansion. It's so gorgeous, really cool design, huge property. And I walk in the foyer, and there's this huge, like, engineering sculptures, the best thing that I can describe it. And there's all these like old antique wheelchairs and stuff. He's a collector of antique wheelchairs. And all this like stuff that I had no idea what I was getting into. I had never been to anybody's house that looked like this. I came from a very, military background. People don't live like that.
Right.
So that was just really mind blowing. And then his wife's given us all a tour and taken it. So then Dean comes, he pops in on the tour, and we're in his media room, and he goes, let me just play this video for you guys of this. I was on a TV show. It was on Dateline. He's like, let me play this tape for you. I was on this VHS tape. I was on Dateline, and he was showing us this segment that they did about his inventions and about the work that he's done. And then at that moment, I was like, oh, this guy's a big deal. And then another little favorite story from that tour, that experience that weekend, was his wife took a couple of us into their bedroom. This master bedroom was like this, probably 2,000 square feet area of the home. And she opens up the closet to his wardrobe, and it's all the same shirts, these chambray shirts and jeans. He wore the same thing every day so that he didn't have to spend energy thinking about his wardrobe. It was just cool, just amazing, awesome experience, so fun.
It reminds me of Bill Burr when he just goes after Steve Jobs. He is out on stage in just a pair of jeans and a black turtleneck, like he's Tesla or something. I crack up at that. Yeah. And Dean is like Tesla, like he's very few people you can say are, most people are smart when they get an engineering degree, but this guy is a genius. I mean, he really is. So you have had a shot at greatness there.
I did.
So you left NASA and then you started doing your own thing. Am I correct?
I opened a photography studio. Actually, that was my first venture into entrepreneurship because I was in my first husband married me after I quit my job. And, then we stayed married for about 7 years. But during that time, I decided I wasn't going to go back to corporate work. Really, I didn't really want to do that anymore. So I opened a photography studio, and I was really successful at that. I even got it's called a CPP, Certified Professional Photographers designation, which is right. It's kind of a big deal to get. So I got the CPP designation. I was really, successful at it. Had great clients for many years. But then I learned a lesson there was that, yes, I had free time. I could set my own schedule and everything, but I basically just filled it up with more work. I was working nights, working weekends, working holidays, burnt myself out. And that marriage ended. And then I decided, again, I was like, okay, well, I need to do something else, but what I'm not going to do is create another business where I'm just working all the time. That's not going to work for me. So then I ended up, the only other thing I know how to do other than photography and video and stuff is marketing. So I opened up a marketing agency at the time with 2 business partners. It still exists to this day, even though I'm not in the partnership anymore. It's been about 5 years since I left. So I opened up an agency, and then, eventually led me to where I'm at today. But yeah, that's basically what happened. Was I decided to go into entrepreneurship.
I look back at my own career. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16, and it was really by accident. I just noticed that I was surrounded by entrepreneurs. My mom was an entrepreneur. She was, she had a salon. She did hair. So she had her own salon in the house. My dad was a chiropractor and an accountant. He had an accounting firm. He had his chiropractic business. My grandparents owned a restaurant. So, I didn't think of them as entrepreneurs. I just thought of them that, well, this is what they did for a living.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything else. My other friends, I started to realize as I got older, they were working at the steel foundry or at Hershey, at a Reese's factory making chocolate. And they had jobs, JOBs. And through the years, I don't know about you, but the reason I got into being an entrepreneur is that I like the freedom, number one. And number two, the lesson learned you just talked about is you have to be careful of the creeping scope of your business physically coming in and destroying your personal life. You have to really have that balance. Let's talk about that a little bit, because right now we moved back to Vegas, and my girlfriend and I, we both have our own studios. She does accounting for a global software company, and I do what I do from the studio here in the house. And I got to tell you, it's so much better to be able to shut off the light and walk out that door at the end of the day and close it. And I wasn't able to do that before.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Like I think there's a trap when you're first starting in entrepreneurship where you think that if you're not working, then you're doing something wrong, or someone is getting, like the hustle culture that used to be super hot. That if you're not hustling, if you're not working, then you're losing money or whatever. And I don't know. I just don't, I'm 50, I don't, I'm, if I was 25, maybe I would have that attitude, because I did when I was 25, right. But not at 50. I mean, to me, there are more important things in life, like being happily married, being a good, stepmom, being involved in my church, being healthy, like making time for workouts, and, and my art is really important to me too. And I feel like now, as a lesson learned, over the last 20 years of entrepreneurship is that I'm actually better. I'm actually a more high performing, get better results entrepreneur when I don't let that hustle culture creep into my life, when I am a more well-rounded person with a healthy relationship and healthy, spirituality and healthy body and activities and hobbies that I'm, into.
I noticed, because I lived and worked in New York City for 35 years. The hustle is there. As soon as you open your front door, the hustle. As I'm older now, I started to realize I not only get more work done because I'm now hyper-focused. Like I don't waste time. A lot of us, I'm a baby boomer. I just turned 60, and I realized most of our careers when we were younger was looking busy for the boss. And that becomes a habit, the boss is walking by, let's, shuffle papers or whatever, or get in before the boss arrives and leave after the boss leaves. And so it's a lot of fakery, and but through the years, we forget that we're filling the time with fat. And so now, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about this for any entrepreneurs who are listening out there. I get much more focused. Like I made a nice dinner last night. We relaxed. I watched a little TV. And then when Tal decided she was going to, wind it down for the night, take a bath and all that, I made sure she was taken care of. And I went back into my studio, and I have a writing project for a client. And I was just getting so into the creative flow for about an hour. I just, here's what I'm going to do. And then I wound it down. But it's like, do you find you get more focused and you get more done because you're not wasting time with the hustle? Like, I got to be busy now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the key moments for me deciding to leave Kennedy Space Center, in addition to my then boyfriend telling me that he wasn't going to marry me if I stayed there, was I was working there. Back then it was like you wore a navy blue suit to work, you showed up, you just got there when they told you to get there, and you left when they told you to leave. And it was like, it was probably like 5:30 at night. Class started at 6, and it was inside the gates. So I only had, 10-minute commute or whatever to get to class. And I was leaving, and the president of our division says to me, where are you going, Jen? You working a half day today? And I'd gotten there at like 7:30 in the morning. It's military hours, basically. Yeah. So here I am going on an almost, a 10 and a half, 11-hour day. And he's saying, what are you doing, working a half day today? That was just what corporate culture was back then, what work culture was back then. So I have like mad respect for young professionals now who don't accept that anymore. Yeah. I have a client who works in HR consulting. She calls it the people revolution. I'm so proud of them and glad for them that they don't accept that anymore. So that's great for the younger generation. But yeah, for me, that was just what we did. We just worked a lot, and you didn't even think about it. You didn't question anything. And then, and then I got sick. So fast forward, I'm out of Kennedy Space Center for a while. I had started the agency with my 2 business partners, and then I got really sick with endometriosis. And I ended up having to have a series of surgeries in like a matter of 2 years that literally brought me to my knees and really put a lot, like everything into focus for me. Like I had learned the lesson of work isn't everything, but when you get to the point where your life is flashing before your eyes and you're going like, is this really that important? Even as an entrepreneur, I was sitting in a big fancy office, had 2 business partners, had employees on both coasts, super stressed out, just like so much stress because it wasn't just me that I had to build a business for. It was these business partners, and they had kids. Their wives were having kids at the time and stuff, starting new families. And it was just so much pressure. And I just really, when you're hit with a, I guess you call a bottomed out moment like that, it just puts everything into perspective for you. Like I just think it just from my life lessons, all of these different things, it's just more important that you have a well-balanced life. It's not going to be perfectly balanced all the time. It's not going to be 50-50 all the time, but it at least needs to be a focus and needs to be a priority to work towards that, towards a healthier life.
It's interesting that you say that, because it really is certain things in life. And, I hate to say this, and yet I'm okay saying it. Sometimes spirit, God, whatever people want to call it, you get smacked to wake you up from the illusion.
Yes.
Is really what happens. And you can see it in other people, somebody who's too happy, or life just takes this nosedive, and all of a sudden that person comes out of it happier, believe it or not. A lot of people don't get that.
Right.
But it's sort of this initiation by fire. Wouldn't you say that's true? Like you got awakened, I'm sure.
Okay. So we want to go there. Let's go deep.
Okay, let's do it.
I was an atheist up until that point, up until about 2011, when all this stuff was kind of coming to a head, 11 to 13. My whole life, being successful, being healthy, being happy, I guess you could call it. But I just didn't really ever stop to think about, like, what happens when you die, or is God real? And I never stopped to think about those questions until that moment, literally, Brad. And I decided, and it was more than just finding work-life balance or getting some guy to marry me. It was deeper. It got deeper than that. And it got to the point where, like, this is your life. What does it mean? What is important, really important? Mm-hmm. And then what happens after? Like, where are you going with this? And so I just really started asking deep questions and became a Christian, actually, about 2 years into the journey, realizing that God is real, and Jesus is who he says he is. And so that was my journey of spirituality, I guess you could say, was that God does have a plan for my life. I am wonderfully created, and everything happens for a reason, not just as a Hallmark quote, but for real, that God has me in the palm of his hand, and that Jesus is who he says he is. And so I decided to become a Christian after a series of things that happened, and reading and studying and praying and getting some spiritual guidance from pastors and asking a lot of questions from a lot of people that I highly respected. But yeah, so it went a little bit deeper than just the work-life balance thing for me.
I'm sorry I'm laughing, but I could see you. I for those of you who don't know, I know Jen personally, so I could see you going up to these pastors and just, I have a question here.
I had all the questions.
And I'm like, there's Jen. Oh, there's Jen again, doing her thing. And so I'm cracking up. I'm also thinking about your ex-husband. He's sitting there going, it's either NASA or me. One of those. But it's turning points like that. Mm-hmm. That bring you to your knees. When I was growing up as a kid, I went to Catholic school, mm-hmm. And I went to Catholic school at a time when they would torture you. I mean, they would beat you and all this. So it was not a great experience, and I came out of that not hating, Christ or any of those things, not at all. Quite the opposite, actually. I realized those people in those positions back in that era, that's what they thought, being a good Christian was. Mm-hmm. Beat the tar out of a child.
And I'm so glad that I didn't have, because I know a lot of Catholic people. I'm not Catholic. They're different. Catholic and Christianity are kind of different things. But I'm so glad that I didn't have a religious. I don't even consider myself religious. I am a Christian. I'm not a religion. I'm not in it for the religion. I have a relationship with Christ. That's what I have. And but I'm so glad, because I have so many Christian friends who came out of experiences like that, where religious and works-based Christianity, which has not been my experience. But I understand what you're saying. But my second husband, who I was married to at the time that this all was going down, his name's Will. He was a Christian, and he had shared a little bit of his faith with me. I thought he was nuts. I thought he was crazy, but he had shared a little bit of his faith with me. But then when God started, like when I started seeking, the Bible says, seek and you will find the truth, and Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. But when I started seeking and finding that, this is true. This is how the world works. This is why it works this way. And he is who he says he is. But I had you're right. I had so many questions. Like I had to dig so deep. My husband didn't even know the answer to the questions because he didn't know. And he grew up Catholic, like went to Catholic schools, but is not Catholic anymore and just a Christian, but he didn't even know. So he like literally took me to the church that he went to, dropped me off with the pastors and was like, help her. I don't even know what to say to her.
Get the demons out of her. She's asking too many questions. That's funny because, I'm not a Catholic. And although I grew up in it, my mother, this was the greatest gift. My mother was a born again Christian, and she would church hop because she was looking for churches that didn't judge. And she just was bothered by that. But I remember when I was little, she comes back from Holy Communion, and our church was being torn down. We had a cathedral at St. Mary's in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. And so they temporarily did church and mass and everything, Christmas mass, at the auditorium in the school and the rectory, which is connected to the rectory and all that. So my mother comes back from Holy Communion and her fingers are crossed, and she comes back into the pew and she's walking over to me, and she gets down real close and she goes, Bradley, this isn't the truth. There's so much more in the depth of, God, Christ, or whatever. And I want you to go look for it. And I'm 10. So I'm sitting there going, what are you talking about? So I feel I've had probably the greatest adventure in life simply because I always check inwardly for everything. I always check with, God. And a lot of people don't know that about me. But I will talk to God under the stars. I'll just look up and say, hey, that's my prayer. That's how I pray.
Yeah.
And I meditate and things like that. But I think that intuition guides us if we're willing to listen. And I really, really take my hat off to you for discovering this later in life, because most people, they're raised in it. And you made the transition because you dared to ask the right questions. So awesome.
Yeah. And, also I read the Bible for myself. Like still I'm, so on October 25th, 2013, I got baptized as a public declaration of my decision to follow Christ. So it's been about 10, probably 11 years. I guess I would consider myself a Christian. And so I'm a born again Christian. It sounds so weird when I say it out loud, because if I would have never thought that I would say in my younger years, especially from my family of origin and stuff, that I would become a born again Christian. You sound like a wackadoo, but I don't know. To me, it's just been very simple. I just read the Bible for myself. I have pastors that I trust, people that I, rely on and go to. And I still ask a lot of questions. I study apologetics, Christian apologetics, for myself. There are some classes that I take online. I'm very involved in my church. I'm a discussion group leader at my women's church at my church in the women's group. And one of the, I love it when we get a lot of people that came from Catholic background that don't feel like they have a relationship with Christ. And they come from out of that works-based religion, and they just want a relationship with Christ. And so I feel like, God has taken me and put me to this place even just as a leader in the women's group at my church, because I understand where people are coming from when they have all of these questions about Christianity and what's true, what's not true, and what do you do, what do you not do, what does the word. So I just study the Bible. If you want to hear from God, read the Bible. It's like right there in black and white. And I just follow Christ's example and do what he says to do.
It's a guidebook. That's what it is. It's just basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Yeah.
That's what Bible means.
Yeah.
Basic instructions before leaving Earth. You got to learn how to get along with people here. I was going to ask you, how has faith shaped your life? we already answered that.
What's so fun? And like, to me, it's just like the most interesting thing that's ever happened to me. Like I've had all these cool experiences and met all these amazing people, like NASA astronauts and stuff. But really, discovering Christ and that the Christian journey is the most important aspect of my life. Like really, it's, to me, it's the thing that I'm the most passionate about. I just don't happen to work, I guess you could say, like in Christian ministry or anything like that. So sometimes when you look at my social media platforms, I don't talk about it all that much, but to me, it is the center of my life and the most interesting thing, I think.
Yeah, I don't believe you should wear it on your sleeve kind of thing. I believe you should just live it in your own way. You are the light, you represent JC, as I look at it. We had Dog the Bounty Hunter on the show about a month ago, and he talked about the little Godwinks that helped him and Francie not only heal from the death of both their spouses, but realize this was a God-chosen relationship. And I just was so blown away at their honesty within their faith, because some people, there are wackadoodles, and then there are people who are just, they put their head down. You would never know that they were faith-based in their life. But I realize, there are two types of people. And there are those who, as it says, meditate on the Lord, and they feel that pulse of spirit. They know that Christ is standing right next to them. And then there are those who they are reading and they're stuck in their heads. And, and I'm not judging that, it is what it is. But it takes a while to evolve into the heart-centered part of this. Just living that way. Did you find that, did you go to the heart right away, or was it mind stuff right away?
I mean, I think the sign that you're a Christian is that you're Holy Spirit filled. I remember one time someone asked me, "Are you spiritual?" And I said, "I'm Holy Spiritual, if that's what you mean." I mean, that's what happens is you become a Christian, the Holy Spirit resides in you. And I used to have moments like for the first probably 5 years of being a Christian, I'd wake up and I'd be like, "Are you still there?" And I'd be like, "Oh yeah." Like I'm different. I am different. And there are so many people that knew me before and then that know me now, like my college friends. They knew me when I was 20 and they know me now. And it's the sanctification process, they call it in Christianese, of Christ changing you. And that's because you see things differently and you see things through his lens. And you see the world the way that God intended it and how it is now and what the disparity is. And that breaks your heart. And it makes you want to get better. It makes you want to do better. I don't want to do works in order to earn my salvation that was paid on the cross, but I want to become a better representative of Christ as part of my sanctification process. And that is only possible through the Holy Spirit residing in you. And my hope is that people can, whatever light they see in me, trust me, it ain't me. I'm a broken human being. I'm a sinner in need of a savior, but it's Christ living in me, through me, and making my priorities different now. Yeah.
It's hard for me. Well, my girlfriend and I, we were having a discussion recently, and I'm pretty calm. You've met me in person. I'm a pretty calm person. And she couldn't understand that. But this is happening. And hey, what about this? And I said, well, I've learned to trust in spirit. So I don't react. I just know it's going to happen.
Right.
And it's a lifetime of knowing and feeling and being connected to the Holy Spirit. I can feel that.
Yes.
All the time. And she is, I don't want to speak for her, but she knows it's there. She senses it, but it's not a 24/7 like it is with me at this point.
Yeah.
And I think, that has helped me immensely in my whole life. And I'm not perfect, like you said. I've made a lot of mistakes in business partnerships, and things like that. And my own marriages, yes. And but I think the lessons learned, I think at the end of this lifetime, you stand before God and Christ and they say, "So what did you learn?"
Yeah.
I don't think it's a harsh judgment. I think it's what did you learn? What did you learn about yourself? Where were you kind of a jerk? Where did you fight your own intuition to be a jerk, and instead you brought compassion. And we talked about this in the previous episode with Chris Widener. Yeah. He put together the course, Jesus, Master of Influence. And he said, one of the most powerful things, I asked him, I said, what do you feel was the most powerful thing that Christ had done in his walk on earth? And he said, when they were going to stone that woman for adultery, and he said, and Christ chose compassion in that moment. And then he chose to question everybody there by saying, let ye who is free of sin cast the first stone. But he was writing in the ground, at that time as well. So you're like, well, what did he write? And Chris speculated it was everybody's girlfriends and mistresses. He's just writing their names. It was funny. We were rolling laughing on that one. Or he was writing scripture.
Yeah. In
the sand. And, the Bible has the lessons we need for today. Don't you think? I mean, we are living in a very bizarre reality right now, and we don't have to go into detail, but
biblical times.
Yeah. How do you handle this? Because, I've learned to shut off mainstream media news.
Oh, yes.
I can't watch it. My blood pressure goes through the ceiling simply because it's crazy talk half the time.
Yeah, it's interesting for me coming from a television background, like working at ABC, and I worked at another TV station too. But I didn't know it at the time, but even when I worked in television at ABC, I was in the promotions department, promotions and marketing. And one of my responsibilities was to write basically the commercials for the news segments, write the commercials that would make people want to watch the news. And I remember there was one of our producers, his name was Branson. He was older than I was because I was straight out of college, but I said something about watching the news. He says, "Oh, I don't watch the news." I said, "But you work at the TV station. How do you not watch the news?" And he said, "I just don't watch it. I just tune it out. I just come here and do my job, and then that's it." And I never thought about what he meant by that until recently, until about the last 3 or 4 years, where I have also completely shut off the media, shut off all of the messages. And there's so much information and messages and mixed messages and straight up lies too, that are trying to be force fed our way. And here's what I learned. The job of the media, their business is built on creating conflict, because conflict is what brings people to watch. People can't help but watch train wrecks, car accidents, fires, burning on an apartment complex, a missing child, a murder case, something like the conflict is what gets people to watch. That is their job, it used to be report on the conflict. Now they create and manufacture conflict because it's television. And the more they can get you to watch, the more eyeballs they have on their news segments, the more they can charge for advertising because it's ratings. So that if you know the reality of what the business is that the media is in, it helps you with the perception that you have of what is being fed your way. Yeah. And so I understand that and know that the media is there to pump out conflict and create division and to create pick sides, right? And so I just don't participate anymore. I just don't participate. I'm like you. I don't watch the news. I try to limit my social media activity as much as I can as an addiction, but I try to limit it as much as I can and just really stay focused on what is true and good. Yeah. Really.
Well, they're called merchants of chaos for a reason. There's several business sectors that are merchants of chaos. They make their money off of chaos. Yep. And if there is no chaos, they don't make any money. So, have you ever watched the Ron Burgundy movies?
Oh, yeah.
They mock how the news really is. I mean, I hate to say it, but I woke up to this, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. My ex-wife, God bless her, we're friends, but she she's from another country, and she would immediately go, "Don't you see this is propaganda? How can you not see this is theater?" And I'm like, "Well, how could you say that? I'm an American. You have to be." And she goes, "This is all theater. They call it, that in Haiti." And I was just like, "What? Wait a minute." And that's when I woke up and I started to realize, I still have friends today who go, "Well, where do you get your news?" Because they go to CNN and they go to, MSNBC and they go to all these places. I go, "Well, if you know that they're trying to tell you how to think, you can stop the message mid-stride and analyze it." That's the key. You have to really understand, well, what are they really trying to make me do right now? And you wake up in the matrix, basically.
Yeah, like just trace it back to the money and the power. That's where it all comes. That's where it all is going to go to. And I refuse to give them any of my power and any of my money. So
there you go. Well, it's you're a smart woman.
Yeah.
So let's talk about entrepreneurs. This show is very supportive of entrepreneurs. So let's shift gears a little bit. I try to always tell people, in marketing, when you're running a company, especially if you're a single person company, there's three things you just got to worry about, and that's sales, management, and marketing. And without marketing, you really can't get sales. So let's talk about that, because you are the marketing and brand expert here today. So what do you recommend that entrepreneurs do?
So my new platform is about creating, back to the theme of creating freedom in your business, freedom in your life, not letting your business bog you down and make you work yourself into the grave. My new platform is about outsourcing your marketing, because that's what I do, marketing.
Right.
And I want business owners to be able, because marketing is the lifeblood of your business, I want business owners to be able to make good decisions about who they're trusting. I have an entire team built of virtual assistants. I have a project manager. I have 2 project managers and a whole team of very talented designers, developers, et cetera, video editors, all these people that have taken me, probably 3-4 years to find, hire, train, keep happy. But the outcome for me, the result has been truly an outsourced marketing system. I call it OMS, truly an outsourced marketing system that's very predictable, that runs like a well-oiled machine. So I'm not guessing on Monday morning when I wake up, what do I need to do to grow my business today? I already know, because I've created a system out of it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what my new platform is about, is creating, taking that freedom theme and building it into your marketing, so that you don't necessarily have to rely on going to 7 a.m. Tuesday morning networking meetings and hope that you meet a prospect when you walk into the country club at your networking group, or doing just relying on word of mouth, which is good. Word of mouth is great, but it's not reliable. No. And, people are busy, especially now. We're so distracted with all the different things that are coming our way, all the information that we were talking about. And so it really is your responsibility as a business owner and as an entrepreneur to, I think, adopt a new mindset around marketing, and to look at that this is another system in your business that needs to be created, it needs to be developed, and you need to trust other people to run it for you. So that's kind of where I'm coming at now. That's
smart. You're a student of Dan Kennedy, I heard in your bio, but Dan, for those of you who don't know, Dan Kennedy is probably the marketing guru that a lot of people turn to when you're a single proprietor. And he calls this magnetic marketing. When you've created such a sexy, romantic offer that people lean in, you don't have to do any sales, or pitching or any of these stuff, because people get to know, like, and trust you. And so they lean forward and they say, well, and Jen, by the way, you have excellent products, excellent content. I suggest everybody go over to YouTube and start watching your work. You become magnetic, it's just as simple as that. People lean forward and they go, well, geez, I want to work with her. And it's not just that, you have a flashy website or you have great videos. It's that you also deliver, and that delivery, the end result is more sales. And so it is what it is. And I love that you do that. So you also talk about, I guess, qualifying leads. And one of the best ways to qualify leads and get, people to convert is basically a magazine. You do a magazine platform, which creates a funnel for people to come in and say, hey, I like this. Do you want to talk about some of your best magazines that you've created for people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this was a Dan Kennedy story. The creation, I call it a magazine funnel. I was at a Dan Kennedy conference probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And there was one of his speakers was on a panel who's like the Dan Kennedy of Italy. And he was talking about how he was publishing a magazine for his personal brand. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. When I worked at Kennedy Space Center, one of my jobs there as the manager of advertising was that I actually was publishing an internal magazine that we were only distributing what I called our armchair astronauts. This was like our membership. I was doing memberships before. It was like a cool thing with coaches. But at Kennedy Space Center, we had a membership. People could pay, a few dollars a month, and they would get the magazine sent to them quarterly. And they would get kind of like behind the scenes information about what was going on at KSC. And so I had this moment, it's called the Orbiter. And so I had this moment where I was like, oh yeah, magazine for a personal brand. Oh, I know how to do that. I did that at Kennedy Space Center, the job where if I could make it there, I could make it anywhere. Right. Yep. And I learned everything. And I was like, how could I implement this for myself? And so I decided to publish my own magazine for my personal brand when I was I was removing myself from the agency that I had started and kind of going off on my own as a keynote speaker and an author and a coach. But the thing that I didn't want to do was to create a, 44-page, 8.5 by 11 brochure and have boxes of them sitting in my garage. I did not want that to happen. So also because I'm a Russell Brunson ClickFunnels student, I came up with the idea of creating a magazine and a funnel, because Russell talks about a book funnel and like giving your book away for free with shipping and then having a funnel on the back. And so I kind of, all these thoughts were swirling around in my mind at the same time, and I landed on magazine. And so I created this concept, and I've been on the ClickFunnels radio show as the creator of the magazine funnel. Forbes Books calls me the mother of the magazine funnel, and been on lots of different stages about the concept. And basically it's using a magazine to build your personal brand. Yes, but it's more than a fancy magazine cover is my pitch. You need the online sales funnel process on the back. So for example, one way that this works for me with my YouTube channel is that I do YouTube videos, been doing them every week for over 3 years, creating high quality, YouTube videos, and helpful, entertaining, inspiring, educational content that people like. They're attracted to that magnetic thing. They're attracted to that, but I don't want them to just stay on YouTube. I need to move them off. Like I need to move them further down my sales funnel. And I want to make it clear to them how that process works. So one of the lead magnets I have on my channel is my magazine. I give away the digital version of my magazine for free. And so people, they go to the landing page, they subscribe, it gets still delivered to their email box. And now I've built an email subscriber list off of giving the magazine away for free. That's just one example. I have tons of clients now, dozens and dozens of clients over the last 3 years since I started offering this as a service. And like one of my clients, he's Steve the Hurricane. He's like a big time coach and speaker in the home healthcare business. And Steve has a conference that he hosts a couple times a year. And so he also gives his digital version of his magazine away for free on his website. He's highly connected and really well known in his industry and has a lot of subscribers on his email list. So he started selling ads in his magazine. Now he's got other people paying for his marketing to get done because they're offsetting the costs of it. And then his funnel is that we have full page ads in the magazine for his conference. The email drip campaign follows up and sends people to the sales page for his conference. And he's been selling out his conference a couple times a year too. Yeah. So that's just, just two examples right there. I've got tons of them, but yeah, it's just it's different and unique for each person depending on what your goals are. But yeah,
absolutely, it's a strategy. But what I find funny is, mailing the actual physical magazine out is I find it hilarious right now, because you and I are old enough to remember the days when you'd get inundated with catalogs that you never signed up for in the mail. You get 5 or 6 catalogs all at once, usually on a Saturday. And as a kid, I couldn't wait for Sears Christmas catalog. And we go through and look at all the toys we wanted to get. But now, because the industry just kind of took a nosedive, if you actually mail something physically to a person, they're like, oh, look what I got. They're like holding it like it's this amazing gift. So it's actually easier to do direct mail nowadays in this climate. You want to talk a little bit about that as well? Because I know Dan.
Yeah, I mean, that's another use. Yeah. And like, Dan Kennedy's big on direct mail too. So I have like 52 ways to monetize a magazine. We're just talking about a few of them right now, but like, yeah, give it away for free. The digital version away for free on your website. I have a bunch of wow boxes that I need to go mail to UPS as soon as we're done with this interview. But I create these branded boxes that I put copies of my book in. I put copies of my magazine in. I put a handwritten note, maybe some stickers, branding stuff in my boxes, and I send them to my clients. I send them to my prospects. And it really, like, I closed a client 3 years ago. She sells metal roofing company in Colorado Springs. And I closed her. This is a multi-six-figure client. Client. She saw me speaking at a Chamber of Commerce event where I was the keynoter, and then became a prospect of mine from the speaking engagement. I mailed her, because she was hot, I mailed her my wow box that had my book and my magazine, my tchotchkes, handwritten note and all that stuff. I mailed that to her in the mail. She was blown away and became my client 3 years ago.
Wow.
Just off of, and that's a multi-six-figure. She sold the business earlier this year, and put in the stipulation of the sale of her business that the new owner, Larry, had to hire me as the marketing person moving forward. Like the like loyalty, the doors that it can open, the amazing, this box cost me $20.
Yeah.
But it's resulted in a multi-six-figure long-term relationship client. Of course, I had to do the work in between. I'm not saying it's just mail a box and you're going to get rich, but it's a very interesting, unique, different way of getting people's attention and showing prospects and your clients that you actually care, that you give a darn about them and their business.
Yeah, that mailer, shock and awe package, whatever you want to call it, when you send that out to a prospective client and you're very clear on what you offer.
Yes.
And what the results are going to be from what you offer. That's important. What begins to take place is people lean forward and they start to hire you. I've seen you on stage. I've seen people buy your box. You have that box that you bring.
That's what I'm doing the same thing. I haven't changed my strategies at all. I call it the wow box. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's phenomenal. Well, right now I'm getting my Awaken Nation podcast website built, getting that done. I finally outsourced it for the first time. I'm a New York designer. It's hard for me to not edit my own videos, do my own graphic design and all this, so it's hard for me to let that part go, but I did this time and I let somebody put in the framework for my website, but it's the beginning of me offering courses and teaching people how to podcast, why you podcast, how it's part of your funnel. It should be part of what you're doing, because there's no longer something called a speaking career. Like you just go out and speak. You have to be an expert in one area or two, and that drives business your way to what you're the expert in. So most people nowadays, that's why they speak. But I love watching you speak, by the way. Were you natural on stage, or did you have to work at it?
I mean, I'm a very introverted person to begin with. Like, what? Oh gosh, yeah.
That's why it's so easy to tease you.
Yeah, like I'm a homebody introvert. I do not being on stage for me, I'm not there because I like the spotlight. That is not me. I'm only there because I feel like I have value that I can bring. I speak to entrepreneurs and business owners. I don't do corporate work, but I feel like I have knowledge and experience and ideas and things that people want to hear about. That's why I'm there, is because I just have value to share. But speaking on stages is not easy for me. It wipes me out. When I'm off of stage, I am exhausted for 2 days because I just leave it all there. But it really takes a lot out of me. I enjoy it, but I'm not and it's so funny because I'm on the board of directors for the National Speakers Association. I'm going into my 4th term as the marketing director for the Colorado chapter. And we just won a bunch of awards at the national conference for being like the most certified speaking professionals, fastest growing chapter, and all these things.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm going into my 4th term with that. And so I'm surrounded by speakers. I have a lot of clients that are speakers, and I see what it takes to be like a performer and to go on stage, like once a week, twice a week. That's just not me. That's why I like YouTube, because I can do it from the safety of my basement in my house, still get my message out, but it doesn't take as much out of me as stage does.
Well, speaking is a very powerful piece of anyone's platform. And I can attest to this because when I first started speaking, I had done stand-up comedy. I'd played drums. I've been on stage my whole life, since I was 9 years old. And so when I decided to become a corporate speaker, I bombed. Okay. This first couple of ones, I did a Chamber of Commerce up in Albany. And I bombed so bad, I sent my tape to my mentor at the time, my speaking mentor, Stephen S. Little. And he looked at the tape and he goes, "You did stand-up comedy, right?" I said, "Yeah, for about 8 years." He goes, "Did that guy show up at that gig?" Meaning me. And I was rolling laughing because I wasn't taking it personally, but I worked, and you can attest to this, I worked really, really hard to get that first 20 minutes of my program so solid I can do it in my sleep. And I started using props as well, because I do generational influences and things like that. So I would take the GAF Viewmaster on stage and then a Nintendo 64 controller, and then people they stopped arguing. It was that visual part that made people stop arguing. They go, "Oh, maybe the next generation is different." So I'm going to ask you, what has had the biggest impact on your being able to get up on stage and speak?
Training. I mean, you need coaches for sure. You definitely need mentorship. So I do speaking. I just shared with you my why behind my speaking. It's not to be famous. It's not to be, look at me. I don't think about it that way at all. I'm the opposite. Like, don't look at me. I do it because I'm of value, and my goal is to be of value. And I don't really focus on being the best speaker. I just try to present myself well. But I've taken improv classes. I've had mentors in the National Speakers Association. I'm very involved on the board of directors, like I mentioned, for the last 4 years. So I come to every meeting. Every month we have speaker training, basically. And I just listen. I listen to what the speakers tell me to do, and then I just implement it. Like, I don't really overcomplicate it. I just do what people tell me to do, and that's it for me.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're thinking about taking your marketing to the next level, I suggest you reach out to Jen. She just, as you can hear, she knows her stuff. It is a huge juggling to figure out what works for your marketing. You have speaking, you have book writing, you have magazine publishing, and all this. How about if you just sit down with Jen and do a consulting, and she'll help you. Trust me on that one. She's really great. You also have an offer that you do. I was very impressed with this. You can find holes in a person's business. You offer. Do you still offer that? Where you sit with them for like an hour and you offer it?
Like my 100K offer, where I can show you where 100K in potential revenue is in your business, and I can do it in 45 minutes or less. It's not an active offer because I've just gotten so busy doing it, but I would do it for your audience. Brad, if they go to my website, jendevore.rocks, and they fill out a contact form and they just tell me that they heard me on your show, I will do it for your audience. I had to limit it just because I mean, especially when I was offering it from stage, one time there was like 50 people in the room. I closed 25 of them onto my calendar, and it just got to be too many, but I can do a handful of them for your audience for sure. But my new offer is related to my book, Outsource Your Marketing. If you're interested, even if you don't want to hire me, even if you're just looking to hire a website designer, a VA, a project manager, you're thinking about an agency, a social media manager, go on my website. I've got, it's jendevore.rocks/outsourced. Those are the resources that I'm giving away for free related to my book. There's like a delegate to accelerate checklist, like what you need to get rid of off of your plate first, kind of some items in priority. There's a couple training videos in that offer also that are not on my YouTube channel. They're private only for my book readers. And then there's some resources there that will help you make better decisions and ask better questions before you sign a contract with any marketing freelancer.
Wow. Pick up the book, folks. Reach out to Jen. We're going to have all her URLs, her addresses in the show notes. Thank you so much for being on Awakened Nation, Jen. I'm honored to have you on the show today.
It's my honor, Brad. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, we're not done yet. I always do that 3-question round at the end. So you have not escaped that. We'll do that real quick. The lightning round.
Lightning round.
I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Do your best to answer them. What do you do or participate in that we don't know that you do?
I'm an oil painter. I'm studying the Bob Ross technique for mountain oil painting. A couple of weeks, I'm actually going to Muncie, Indiana to paint in the actual house that Bob Ross recorded his PBS television special for many years. That's how serious I am about that. So that's kind of my hidden hobby and talent that not that many people know about.
Going to paint that little cloud right up there. There. Beautiful. That happy little tree. There you go. My second question is, you and your husband are adorable together. You're like a freaking Hallmark card, TV show. I watch the two of you. You once in a while post pictures of the two of you. What is the one thing you just, this is why you're with him, you adore about him? What is that one thing?
He's the opposite of me. I'm an introvert. He's an extrovert. He says, if it wasn't for him, I would never leave the house. Like, seriously. He's the party planner. He's the social chairman of our relationship. And he gets me out where otherwise I would just sit in my painting studio all day long and never leave.
You're a true introvert.
Introverts need extroverts.
Yeah, they do. And my last question, I have to ask this. Listening to your conversation about faith and love and Christ and living in that, what is your favorite memory of all that work that you've done?
This is going to sound weird, okay? But I had a moment where I was laying in the hospital bed after one of my surgeries, and I was to the end of myself. I was done. And there was this, I can see it in my mind. There was the hospital tray was next to the bed, and my cell phone was on it, but it was just out of reach. I was like reaching my hand across, and it was just out of reach, and I couldn't move because my surgeries were all abdominal, and I couldn't like get up. Right.
Right.
I was so devastated and lonely, and I prayed in Jesus' name for the first time. And I am not lying. A few minutes later, the pastor of the hospital walked into my hospital room, came to my bedside, and offered to pray with me. And that was the first time that anyone had ever prayed with me. And I do not believe that that was a coincidence. I know to my bones that that was God showing himself and showing up in my life and letting me know that he hears me, he sees me, and that he loves me. I could cry telling that story every time I tell it, but that was one of my favorite moments with Christ.
Wow. Thank you, Jen, for sharing. By the way, a lot of people cry on my show, just so you know. But thank you. Thank you so much for being on Awakened Nation. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Hey, everybody. Don't forget to tune in next week, another extraordinary guest, and make sure you reach out to Jen. great content, and she can help you along the way. So bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.